All right, great. Thank you, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Ann Schaefer. I'm the Senior Customer Success Specialist here at MarketSight. Today we're going to cover collaborating with dashboards. So we're going to be taking some of our findings from MarketSight and some of the charts that we've produced, and we're going to place them into dashboards in a couple of different ways. So we'll be covering things like the layout of dashboards, how to add content, how to share. We'll cover making dashboards on our own, as well as using MarketSight services for that. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next part of the presentation here. So let me bring up MarketSight. All right, so we are currently logged in to MarketSight. Now the idea, of course, with the dashboard is that a dashboard is a great way of sharing your findings with your clients. And not only does it really share findings, but it can share a story about those findings as well. You're able to take any content that you've created in MarketSight, such as a crosstab, a chart, or even a data view, and place those into the dashboards that you use. So in sum, you're going to be working essentially from left to right through the MarketSight workflow until you arrive at dashboards. I'm going to go ahead and open up that dashboards page here, and on this page I'm going to see a list of all of the dashboards that are currently in my account. All of these dashboards are ones that I or other users in this account have built over time. I can see a summary, of course, of the contents of each dashboard here as well. Now, if I'm looking to make a dashboard from scratch, I do have a couple of different options on how I can choose to approach that. If I take a look under the New menu here, I'll see that the first option is New Dashboard. Now, if I choose this option, this is essentially the same as a blank PowerPoint slide. So when I begin, I'll see essentially the editor here on the left-hand side, and then the dashboard area here on the right. The idea here is that if you are the creative sort and you like to have a blank slate on which to start, this is going to be the best method for you. However, you may choose to have a little bit of assistance to begin with. And in that case, you're probably going to want to go with the new Dashboard from Template option here on the Dashboards list page. If I take a look at this templates page here, I can see that we have a number of templates that have been added to this account. These templates were created by our designers, and as you can see, they come in a variety of colors and different layouts. So some are vertical, some are horizontal, some are intended for mobile use, and some are not. And really, which one you pick is ultimately up to you. In this case, I might choose, say, this narrow mobile layout, and begin by selecting that. MarketSight's going to go ahead and load that particular template for me. Now there are lots of different things that are going on here already that we should probably take a moment to discuss. The first thing is that MarketSight's templates are going to include placeholders. The placeholders are these diagonal striped boxes that I see here in many locations of this dashboard. The placeholders, as we'll see shortly, are going to actually hold the space or reserve the space for content. It's very similar to the boxes that you might see in PowerPoint that say something like click here to add chart, click here to add text. Very similar concept to that. You'll also see that we have things like an image placeholder already here, and indeed we have a text placeholder as well. So these elements are pre-populated for you, but you do not necessarily have to leave these as is. Say, for example, I decided I did not necessarily want my logo in this upper left-hand corner. That's not a problem. I can certainly delete that placeholder simply by selecting it and pressing delete on my keyboard. I can, of course, move objects around. So my title, although it's centered at the moment, I can move that over to the right simply by adjusting the size of that box. As you can see, this is, again, very similar to that PowerPoint experience that we really are all quite familiar with. I can even change the layout of this particular dashboard itself. So in this case, I'm looking not only at placeholders, but if I am careful in my selection here by clicking, I can see that I'm actually looking at boxes that are behind those placeholders as well. Now, let's say these particular boxes here, I wanted to have those on the right-hand side instead of here on the left. That's actually very easy to do. I can select multiple objects at once in my dashboard by holding Shift when I do my selection, and I can use either the arrows on my keyboard or in fact, I can move them back and forth by clicking and dragging. Now I'm going to move these guys over here, and as you've noticed, of course, they are underneath this white box. Same thing is going to happen most likely when I drag these guys over here. The white box is on top. Now, of course, this may seem like a bit of a problem, but not to worry, because we can in fact address this. We have a couple of different means of addressing the concept of layering within a dashboard. The first is to utilize the selection pane. Now, if I take a look over here on the left-hand side in my editor, I'll see that we have a selection tab right here. Anything that is selected here by clicking on it is going to be what I see then highlighted in my dashboard area here on the right. Now, if I have a checkbox next to it, that means that it's actually visible. So if I actually deselect a checkbox, that will hide that particular object. I don't necessarily need to select through this, although it can help when I have objects underneath another object. In the case of my white box here, if I want to send this further back, I can simply click on that and I'll see that selection reflected in my selection pane. All right, so now that I have these guys selected, I can use the arrows here in my selection pane to move these objects up or down, or forward or backward, as one might say in PowerPoint, in order to achieve a layout. So in this case, I'll simply hit down a few times, and as you can see, that's now moving those underneath those particular gray boxes. All right, so another way of mentioning or doing that would be to use up here in the gray options here, we have an align option, and then we have an arrange option as well. Arrange is where you're going to find, again, bring to front, send to back, or bring forward or send backward. Now, if you're wondering what the difference might be, it's simply a matter of degrees. If I bring this all the way to the front, that's going to put it in front of everything that's in my dashboard. Now, if I said bring forward, that's going to bring it forward one step. So if I do that, you might have been able to notice that very quickly these selected objects moved up one place in my selection pane. So two means of accomplishing that task. All right, so now at this point, let's say I needed to move this white box. I wanted to move it over to the left. Not a problem. Again, as with those gray boxes, once I've made a selection, I can simply click and drag to extend both the object that's in this template as well as that placeholder on top of that object. So it's a very simple, again, click and drag style process here in order to achieve that particular look. Now that I've got these over to the side, of course, and my gray boxes are on the top, I can see that they're not exactly even. I wasn't being all that careful when I was dragging. That, of course, happens. We're all in a rush from time to time. So what I can do is make sure that I select all of these objects and then choose the Align option here in the gray toolbar. These are common options that you would see, say, in PowerPoint, and if I choose Align Right, for example, all of my selected objects will be aligned distinctly to the right-hand side. Now, in my case, I think we could probably just move these over, maybe a hair more, give it a little more visual breathing room there. And at this point, we're probably ready to get going. So now that I've got my layout looking a little more like I would like it to, let's actually start adding some content to these. Now, this is where those placeholders are going to come into play. So I'm going to switch over to my Charts tab here. Now, taking a look at this Charts tab momentarily, I do want to point out this change link that's sort of hidden, if you will, in plain sight off here to the far side. This change link is actually very useful. It's going to allow me to go ahead and then show my different data sets and choose different data sets. So let's say I click Change. I'm going to then be able to select a different file here. That will change the content that I have loaded in this panel, so I can actually show items from different data sets. Now in this case, I'm just going to click out of that. We're okay for the moment. So I'm now going to look for content that I want to add. To do that, once I've located my content, I simply click and drag from the left into a placeholder here on the right. Now in this case, I'm going to show you the effect of the placeholders by dragging the same chart over twice. Now in this case, the best wireless provider in this larger white box is, as you might expect, resizable to that particular placeholder. However, if I took that same chart and I dragged it over into a very small placeholder, I'm going to end up with a very small chart. In this case, I can see that this is not necessarily the best choice for this particular chart type. That's not a problem. As you can see, it illustrates that placeholder capability of controlling the dimensions very well. But of course, if I change my mind, obviously this is a little small, I can always convert these objects back to placeholders simply by right-clicking, choosing Convert To, and then Placeholder will be that option right underneath. So once I've done that, I'll see those diagonal lines reappear there, and we are good to go. All right. So in a case such as a small box, I might choose a smaller chart type. One of the available chart types in MarketSight would be the KPI. So a KPI is a single data point represented in a number format. I have a few of those, so I'll go ahead and I will drag those over here. And then of course, as you can see, that simply populates into those little placeholders that scales, and I get my KPIs. All right. Now, let's say I do need to add some more content, but perhaps it's a little difficult to find it in the list of objects that I have here. That's certainly not a problem. I can go ahead and I can search for content. So as long as I remember part of the name of that object, I can locate it by this. So in this case, I'm going to search for customer service, and I'll see that I have a couple of different charts. Note that the icon is going to tell me the chart type. So in this case, I happen to know off the top of my head that I want to actually put in a word cloud here. So I'm going to grab this one. This icon here is representative of a word. So I'm going to drag that over, and again, that's going to populate and to fit in that space. Now, just as a quick refresher, let's say I wanted to expand that, make it a little bigger, not a problem. I can always get rid of extra content that I don't need, again, by selecting it and hitting delete, or even by right-clicking on a selected object and choosing delete that way. That in turn is going to enable me to select both the object, in this case, as well as my chart, and give myself a little more room. All right, so we've been adding objects to our first slide. I'm just going to, for the moment, make sure that I save this. So let me add in a specific title. The title that you see here, I should point out, is not the same as the title that you see here on the far side. This is going to be the title on the left here that you see in MarketSight. So as the creator of this object, this title is the one that you would want to name so that you know what the content relates to. In this case, I'll give it today's date. A little hard to believe that it's the 8th, but here we are. I'll call this customer service. Then I'll click Save As, and I'll choose to save this as a dashboard. All right. Now that I've done that, changes have been saved. Excellent. I should, of course, probably change this title that my clients will see. So I'll call this Customer Service Report. And just as a note, I can also choose to format this as well. So let's say 18 is a bit small, perhaps 24 is a bit big. You can, of course, experiment to find the best option for your layout. These can, of course, have the colors change, so I might change this to white. And I can even do things like highlight or align my text in different directions. So let's say I'll align that a little more to the right. Now at this point, let's say hypothetically, I filled in the rest of my chart template here, but I wasn't exactly done. Let's say I wanted to add something like a crosstab or even a data view to support these charts that I have here on my first page. One of the things that's nice about the MarketSight dashboards is that you're able to actually split up the content into different pages. That makes it a little easier for users to digest because they're able then to look at, just this page, just this content. You can essentially use the pages to sort what they're looking at. Now, I'm going to enable multiple pages here by selecting this checkbox here on the Design tab. Once I've done that, I'm going to see page 1 and page 2 appear here up at the top of my screen. I'm going to actually show you a little secret here. By default, page 2 is going to be completely blank, and that might be fine for some purposes, but if you're like me, you probably want a very similar layout to the one that you have on page 1. If that's the case, simply right-click on the button for page 1 and choose to copy page 1. That's going to get you an exact copy of this particular page. Now, of course, if I say right-click on any object, I can convert that back into a placeholder, and I can use that space for something else. Now, in this case, let's say I wanted to put some crosstabs in here. Again, not a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself just a bit more room by getting rid of some of these objects. So again, just deleting a few things by selecting, and if you're feeling like you need to do more than one thing at once, you can, of course, select multiple objects and then delete those. Now I'm going to take my particular chart here, I'm going to convert that back into a placeholder. So again, that is a right-click on the object, convert to placeholder. And I'm going to make sure that my placeholder and my box are going to expand. And let's say we'll do perhaps the full width here. And maybe we'll make it, just a hair longer. This won't be quite long enough for my crosstab that I plan on using, but that's okay. What's going to happen is that I'm ultimately going to get a scroll bar that will enable me to see the remainder of my crosstab content. So that way nothing is cut off just in case. But of course, if I do need to make sure that I expand that, as you can see, that's doable. I simply need to click and drag as I would in PowerPoint until I've reached the full length of my crosstab. Now at this point, I might want to get rid of page 2. Clearly, there's nothing there. So to do that, I would simply right-click on page 2, and I would choose to delete that. It'll confirm that I want to delete page 2. That's fine, so we can click Proceed. And now I'm probably going to want to rename page 1 as well. Leaving it on copy of page 1 and page 1 may not be as descriptive as I would like. So I'll rename this copy of page 1. We'll call that Crosstabs. And then page 1 itself, let's rename, and we'll call that Charts. All right, and again, I like to save periodically, so I do recommend saving, especially if you're going to step away from your computer for a bit of time. Always save just in case. All right, so we've added a couple of different objects so far. We've added charts, we've added crosstabs, we've added pages to this dashboard. But there are other item types that we can add as well. So, for example, let's say back down here on page 1, let's say I wanted to take this particular placeholder box here, and I wanted to use this to add some text. I wanted to add an explanation. Not a problem. As you can see in the gray toolbar here, there's an Add Item option. And underneath Add Item, I will have Add Image, so great for things like logos. Adding text, again, explanations or bits of detail that you might want to include, perhaps extra titles or subtitles. I can add additional placeholders, so more of these little placeholder boxes. And then I can also add links to other websites, so say the company website or Google or something like that. And then I can also add videos as well. Now if I have a placeholder selected when I choose one of these, what's going to happen is that placeholder will then be transformed into that type of object. So in this case, that entire box is now a text field that I can enter text into, or in this case, test text. Of course, as before with my title, this can be formatted, so I can choose from different fonts, font sizes, styles, as well as colors and alignment options. So different types of objects are able to be added to your dashboard to give a fuller picture or even story underlying the data that you're sharing with your clients. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save. Again, generally recommend saving. Now, I happen to have this dashboard say mostly complete, but let me switch over to a dashboard that I do have completed here. So I'm going to switch over to the dashboards page, and I'm going to load my demographic dashboard with video here. This particular dashboard is based on some charts from a similar data set, It is utilizing the ability to add an image. It's utilizing the ability to add a video as well. This is an MP4 file that I uploaded to this dashboard. And in addition, it's also showcasing the filter panel that is available for all dashboards. Now, this particular filter panel that I have here already has several variables in it. I can see that those different variables are different styles. So if I send this to a client, and we're going to cover sharing in just a minute, they can interact with this dashboard and they can filter the data and change things. Now, if I currently leave this particular setting here on auto, that means that whenever I make an individual change, my dashboard is going to immediately update. So say if I adjust that slider there, I see a little bit of an update here and that my filtered variables are listed, and of course my data has now changed. I can see that I have 99% of my respondents included. Let's say I change it a little on this end. What change do we get there? Now we're down to 13, so big difference there. However, if I don't want to see that sort of change happening instantly, that's very easily done. I can actually change this by clicking on it to manual. You can see an apply button now appears. This is going to be especially handy if you happen to have users who like to make multiple selections. So say, for example, in the case of checkboxes here, I might say deselect the option to select all, and then I might add in some of these filters here. Let's grab perhaps that one as well. You'll notice that nothing has changed yet. In order for that to take place, I need to click Apply since this is now on manual mode. So that's going to make it a lot more convenient for those users of yours who might prefer to make multiple selections, then apply the changes, rather than have an individual change take place, one change take place, and so on. Now, when it comes to putting these filters into the dashboard, that's actually a very simple process. So even though it may look like we've got a lot going on, not too much. I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit. This is a dashboard that I've shared previously, so it's going to warn me that this is in Key Findings. That's okay. What I'm looking for specifically in order to manage my filter panel here is the Interactivity tab. Here on the Interactivity tab, the first thing you'll want to take a look at is to make sure that your Enable Filters checkbox is selected. Once this is selected, you then have the filter panel appear. By default, it's going to be on the left-hand side. However, you can change it to any position, top, bottom, left, or right, depending on the preferences and your particular layout. So in this case, top doesn't look too bad since I don't have too many variables. But I think I'll leave it on the left, as that's really where a lot of us tend to expect menus and things to be located. I can format this in addition, so right now I'm using the light color scheme as that blends in very well with my gray background. This can easily be changed, however, to dark, so if you have a darker themed layout, this can blend in with that look much better. I can also do things like adjust the accent color, so currently that is this lovely shade of blue, but if I wanted something, say, brighter, not a problem. That's going to go ahead and change, again, based on the selections that I've made. So, again, very simple process. And in fact, if you don't have a particular web-safe color that matches, very often clients or even your own company will have a scheme, like a template that you must follow. You can actually put in the custom color, so the RGB or even the hex codes, in the Custom Color tab. All right. Now that I've got my filter formatted, we probably want to think about whether it's expanded or collapsed and whether or not we have additional variables in this particular filter. So taking a look here, right now both of my settings here are expanded. So this means that in the case of my variables, if they're expanded, they're going to be open by default. Now in the case of my panel, that means that I see all the variables by default. If I change these to collapsed, I'm going to see something like this instead. If I collapse my variables, I'll see individual variables, and then my respondents, or I should say my users, would need to go through and make selections based on the variable that they then choose to open. Likewise, if I choose collapsed for my filter panel as a whole, that's going to save me a lot of visual space, especially when a client first takes a look at this dashboard. If I see this, I now have a small icon here. I can go ahead and select that to open up those filters, and of course click on it one more time to close it. So that can make it visually much easier to minimize the amount of space those filters may be taking. Now in terms of the control type, this is the next option that you see down here. By default, variable types will have a different control type. Monthly cell phone bill that we see here, for example, was a numeric variable. It had no labels. Respondents were simply asked to enter in the amount in numbers that they spent per month on their cell phone bill. As a result, that's being shown as a slider, where I can slide in or out these little endpoints and then adjust who I am including as a result. In contrast, household income was a variable where they had to select a single value. And as a result, I see these checkboxes here. However, these can be changed as I'm designing this filter panel. You'll notice that there's a small little arrow here, and I can also right-click on the header for that variable. That will then get me additional options to format this particular variable. So I could change this from checkboxes to radio buttons, for example, and that would change it so that my clients could only select one particular type of response. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, again, collapse these guys here. And the one last thing I want to mention down here, this may be self-explanatory, but just in case. It's very much like dragging and dropping elsewhere in MarketSight. Any variable that I would like to include as a filter, I simply need to make sure that I click and drag from this list here on the side to the appropriate section here on the right. So let's say I wanted to include gender as a filter. I simply click and drag, move that over, and I'm good to go. So that will now be in that filter panel as a variable. So simple to use. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, again, save one more time. And now that we've covered the content, so we've covered designing a dashboard, we've covered changing templates and modifying those templates, we've covered the content itself, so adding charts and crosstabs, as well as adding different objects like text, or even adding these filter panels in. Let's take a look now at actually sharing and the different means that we can use to share these dashboards that we've created with clients. So I'm going to go ahead and close this editor just to keep it a little simpler, visually speaking. The first and perhaps most obvious method to many of us would be exporting this particular dashboard. Now, when I export a dashboard, I do get a choice of template. I can choose to then export it to, say, the full page on a single slide, or I can even export it as an image. And then finally, I can choose to split out the charts that are in this dashboard and then just export those charts, so in this case, these 4 charts here, and I can put any number of charts per slide that I wish. This is probably one of the more obvious methods, but it's not necessarily the best method. If you're working with a dashboard, part of the power of that dashboard is that, in fact, all of the data within this dashboard is still connected to your data sets in MarketSight. That's what enables that filter panel to work so well. It's still connected to everything that you uploaded. All the variables that you've created, those are still in play. The crosstabs that you've made and the charts that you've made, they're all connected. So as a result, you can achieve more functionality as well as more convenience by leaving this dashboard online and sharing it online. Furthermore, if you do tracking studies, dashboards can update. So you can update the data set that they're looking to. And that saves you time because you don't have to replace any of the charts. You simply tell MarketSight that this is my new data set. All of the charts then update to reflect that new content. So definitely some time savings that you want to consider, as well as functionality in keeping this particular dashboard example online. Now, if I want to share this online, I do have multiple options, and you may have explored these before. The first option is to email a link. Now, if I choose to email a link, this is going to allow me to put in virtually as many emails as I would like, and I can then choose how long that link lasts. So one potential scenario for this is if you have a potential client where you want to show them an example of the work that you can do, but you don't really want to give them full, long-term access. You probably would give them, say, maybe a week to take a look at that dashboard. You would send them an email. They would be able to click on that link for only these 7 days that you've specified from this point going forward. Then after those 7 days have ended, their access expires. So this method is convenient if you want to limit time that they have access to this content, as well as if they don't have a MarketSight login. So no login is required for any dashboard that is shared via link. Okay? Now, if you do want to log in, of course, that makes it a bit more secure, then you're probably going to want to choose one of these last two options here. Show URL is the next one down, and this gets you two different URLs that you can choose from. The first is a full-length URL. It's a permanent URL that will take anyone to this particular object, in this case a dashboard. That's great because they're going to be required to log in. Now, this one works best if we're dealing with a full user, so a user such as yourself who is making content, perhaps a colleague who's also working in MarketSight, or even if you wanted to send this to customer service and have us check something that you have a question about. This is going to take us directly to this location, so that's a great purpose for this. You can also use the second link that you see here. This is an ID. So what this does is it allows, say, your IT team to link to this item through our web services. That means that this is one means of embedding this object into a company website. This is still going to require that you log in, so you'll see a small login window in the website, and then you can see the dashboard in question. But this is one way of getting this content embedded into your look and feel. All right, so this method, again, just as a quick review, does require a login. Now, the last option is key findings. As you may recall, key findings, I got a little message when I edited this particular dashboard that this was an object that had been shared in key findings. Do I want to make changes? Okay, yeah, in that case I did. Now, key findings is a portal system, and the first way we're going to take a look at key findings is as a full access user. I am an administrator for this account. So as a result, I choose who sees what in key findings, and I see every option that's available. I can see that in this case, logged in as myself as Ann Schaefer. I have the full site navigation, so whenever I'm done in key findings, I could go somewhere else and continue to work on another project. I can see all of the content that's available here on the far left-hand side. I'm also able to set permissions for all of this content because, again, I'm the administrator for this. So if I wanted to make sure that client A and only client A could see this, I could change the permission settings for that. Similarly, if I choose any individual object here, such as my demographic dashboard with video, I'm going to have the full set of options available to me here at the top. I can say edit this. That's actually going to edit the key finding, so the link to the object and not the object itself. Similarly, as an administrator, I can go ahead and delete this key finding. So not the full dashboard, but just the key finding version of it. It simply removes it from this portal. Last but not least, if I do tracking studies, just in case, I also have another redirect option here. So I can redirect my dashboard in the dashboards page itself, and I can also do that here through the key findings portal. Now, this is not exactly however, what a key findings only user would see. A key findings user is one who does not have access to MarketSight proper. They don't see the full MarketSight. The idea is that you really don't want a key findings user going around and, say, making their own crosstabs. You really just want them to see that content that you created specifically for their use. In that case, they're going to see something slightly different. So let's log in as a key findings user. MarketSight trainee here is not going to have, for example, all of the site navigation. MarketSight trainee cannot go to the variables page and regroup variables. They cannot accidentally delete things because they don't have that level of access. You'll note that 98% of the options, in fact, are gone. So although they have the option to view my demographic dashboard with video, they are not able to edit that key finding. They're not able to go in and delete that key finding. What they can do is use that interactivity, for example, that filter panel that you've set up for them. One common scenario for this is if they have, say, frequent breaks of data that they ask you for. Perhaps they're always asking you to cut the data this way or that way. You could add that to your interactive filters. They are then able to filter based on the variables that they select. They can apply those changes, and then they could say export this out to PowerPoint. So this is one way to enable a self-service scenario for your clients by utilizing these filters. And yes, as you notice, they could also play the video, so that's cool too. All right, switching back to my other browser here where I am logged in as a full access user. There is one last way to share dashboards. So I'm going to head back to the dashboard itself. Let's say we're going to go demographic dashboard with video again. We'll open that fellow up. And the last way to share a dashboard is underneath the Permissions tab. So you're going to need to be a full access user to do this. And you need to be granted permissions by your account administrator. So this is not one that's available to just anybody. But just for the sake of being thorough, we're going to mention it. If I open up the permissions setting for this particular dashboard, the very last option for sharing this is to make this particular dashboard public. So that will allow access to all internet users. No login is required. So this means that it's great for embedding into a company website if you do not want people to have to log in. It also means that, of course, nobody has to log in. So I could just send this link out to someone. I could grab that URL that we mentioned earlier, send it, they click on it, they see the dashboard. That's it. So very simple. But again, it is public. So that means whoever has that link is able to access it because, again, no login is required. So just keep that in mind. Pros and cons to every approach. All right, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. I do want to point out that these examples that you've been seeing so far have been examples that have been made by me utilizing the MarketSight interface. However, depending on your level of skill or if you have a graphic designer, you can go a lot further with it. You can also utilize MarketSight's dashboard design services team if you would like them to, say, create a dashboard for you, create a template, or even just pretty up something that you've made. Now, I've opened up a few examples of some of the work that they've done. This would be a simple example where they've customized the chart formatting quite extensively to achieve a really unique approach to line and column charts, for example. You can see here that we have just the squares rather than the full line. Now, if I'm looking for something perhaps a bit fancier, I might choose this dashboard. This one, as you can see, clearly showcases images that really gives it much more of a visual pop as a result. So this particular dashboard is also an example of one that's interactive too. So although we're utilizing images quite thoroughly here, I could say adjust the filtering and all of these charts are going to update. Finally, this is an example that I happen to like simply because it refers to coffee. But as you can see, it also utilizes information and KPIs from MarketSight in a very effective manner. By utilizing small graphics, such as these boxes, underneath the KPIs, we can really call out the global sales in each of these areas. Now, if you're wondering why people in North America don't drink coffee, don't worry, we do. We just filtered out North America here. So again, all of these filters can be adjusted and the data will update. So these are examples of some of the things that you could ultimately do with the dashboards. If you have lots of images or a designer, or you work with our dashboard design services team. Now, if you do choose to work with the dashboard design services team, I do want to point out that this is actually a free service here. Well, I should say the free consultation, the first consultation is free. The cost thereafter depends on the steps that you choose to take. So as you see, they do offer different options. They will help you devise what to do with your data. So if you have the data and you have no idea on how to put that into a dashboard so that it makes any sense, that's something that they can help you with. They could help you with all of these things. So if you need them from start to finish, that's one thing. Now let's say you put together a dashboard. You got up to the visual design component, but then you needed help. Not a problem. They can also assist you with that as well. So just something to think about. Again, that free consultation is available to you. And then from there, the cost would depend on what you're looking to achieve utilizing the design services team and their expertise. All right. So at this point, really, we've gone over a lot of content that relates to dashboards. We've gone over designing dashboards, so utilizing the different editing functions, as well as adding content to dashboards, either MarketSight content or items such as images, as well as text, placeholders, and so on. We've also gone over customizing templates. So if you've gone through the dashboard from template option under the new button here, we've gone over how to change those templates and how to use them so that you can really customize them to better suit your data. We've also covered the different options for sharing dashboards. So if I head back to a saved dashboard here, and let's say I select that dashboard on this page, I'll see those options here underneath the Share button here. So we've covered creating content and putting that into the dashboard, customizing. We've also covered sharing, and then how MarketSight's team can also assist you. Now, in terms of next steps that you can take, we will generally recommend one of two things, of course. If you would like to work with the Dashboard Design Services team, you can always contact us to schedule that session. You can reach out to us at customerservice@marketsight.com. Now, if you're also looking to, say, take that do-it-yourself approach where you really want to have as much control as possible over how the content is created and how it's displayed, you can always reach out to customer service as well, and we'll help you with training sessions too. So just keep us in mind as a resource, either for consultation or training. We're definitely available to assist you in designing the dashboard that you're looking for. All right, now at this point, we're going to take a quick look at some of the questions that we have. If we're not able to answer all of the questions, either perhaps they may be specific to a project or to a company, not a problem. We will follow up with you by email. But let's see what general questions we have. All right, so the first question that we have, is it possible to add text on the same slide as a chart so it could serve as a headline? Yes, you can do that both in the charts and within the dashboards itself. Let me switch back to MarketSight here. So we're going to escape out of PowerPoint and switch back to MarketSight. Let's say I'm going to create just a quick dashboard from scratch here, just for the sake of example. And let's say I have my best wireless provider chart over here, and I wanted to add some explanatory text here on the side. To do that, I'm simply going to click on Add Item, and then Add Text. That's going to pop open a little text box. This can be moved around, so as you might expect from, say, working with something like PowerPoint, I can adjust the sizing of this particular text box as well as the formatting. And then all I need to do is simply copy-paste text into this box or add text as needed by typing into that. Keep in mind that this can, again, be formatted. So if perhaps I prefer Courier New, and I wanted that to be much larger as a subtitle, as you point out, that of course can all be formatted as well. So keep in mind those little steps too. All right, let's see our next question here. Yes, elements from different data sets can go into the same dashboard. So currently, I am looking at content from my plain old wireless data set, and I can see that by looking here on the left-hand side of any tab where I am in the editor. So be it charts, crosstabs, or data views, I'll see that data set specified. However, I will see that there's a change link here as well. So if I click on that change link, I'm then able to go to any other data set that's in my account. So let's say I choose the 2018 version of my data set. MarketSight's going to go ahead and locate that, and then as you can see, my charts have now updated. Let's say now I wanted to add this customer retention chart in. As before, all I need to do is simply click and drag, and then just as always, I can adjust that in terms of sizing, move it around, and so on. So yes, absolutely, charts from different data sets can go into the same dashboard. All right, the next question that we have, can my dashboards automatically update? The answer to that is yes, they can. So the trick to an automatically updating dashboard is a feature that MarketSight has that's available for enterprise-level accounts and up called Data Sync. If you utilize MarketSight's Data Sync feature, which connects to different survey platforms, you'll find that your data is automatically brought over from that survey platform into MarketSight on a regular basis. As a result, that survey data set then updates continually, and your dashboard then updates as a result. Now, DataSync connects to several common platforms: CMIX, we have Google Surveys, we have Qualtrics and Confirmit connections. So if you work with any of these platforms, DataSync may be something to look into. Now, if you're not using DataSync, it is still a very simple process to make sure that your dashboards update. Essentially, you have two steps that you will need to take, and that's it. The first step, if you have a tracking study and you need to update your dashboard, is to first make sure that you do the append process on the datasets page. So you are likely already familiar with append. If not, please feel free, of course, to reach out to us at customer service. But append creates a combined data file that has both your old and your new data within it. Simply use the append function to create that new data set. Once you have completed that step, you'll go to the dashboards page. Here on the dashboards page, you're looking for that redirect button. Now you can either redirect everything, which is what I'm doing now, since I haven't selected any dashboard, or you can select the checkbox next to a dashboard and then click redirect. Redirect will simply ask you to select your old data set and then tell it what the new data set is. So in this case, perhaps it's my 2018 survey data set appended. All I need to do then is click OK, and MarketSight will point that chart content and the crosstab content in my dashboards to that new data set. So that's all you need to do if you do not have DataSync available. All right, so we have a couple more questions here. What subscription level are dashboards available in? Dashboards are available at the enterprise level and above. So if you're really working online with your clients, or you're intending to move things online for efficiency or to get away from PowerPoint or for any reason really, enterprise is the professional or is the subscription level you'll want to work with. In terms of how long people usually spend on the design of dashboards, which is our next question, that really can depend. That can be quite simple. You know, say for example, if you utilize a template, you already have your charts made, you can imagine that it would take a mere matter of minutes to drag things over into the template. Once you start customizing, that's really where time comes into play. If you work with our design services team, I would say typically anywhere from a few hours to 10 hours or even more, depending again on the complexity of the project that you request. The design services team can do very simple things for you, or they can even create customized dashboards that have content and functionality that we have not seen based on your request. So depending on how far you choose to go, that can really change that time frame. All right, we're just out of time here, so let's answer one more question and then we'll take the rest over email and follow up with you. All right, the last one is, do I need to recreate charts in the dashboard if I have a new wave in my study? And the answer is no. So you don't have to recreate anything. Really, the append process and the redirect step, those two steps that we just described, those are going to be what you're going to need to do, and that's it. So no recreating of charts, no need to reinvent the wheel. Simply make sure that you do the append on the datasets page, and then point your dashboard to the new dataset by using redirect, and that's it. All right, so we do have a few more questions, and we will follow up with those on email. So don't worry if we haven't addressed your question specifically, we will get to you with email. Thank you for attending today. We really do appreciate your time that you spend with us and using MarketSight. And again, if you need anything at all, please feel free to reach out to us at customer service. We will be more than happy to help. So thank you and have a wonderful day.